Hey everyone, welcome to my reading corner. It is time for part 2 of my Tomes TBR. And as I said in the part 1, I don't know if I'll actually get to these books this year. I would like to, but who knows? Because unfortunately, I read a lot of books at the same time. Let's put that there. So here, let's get started, shall we? So first, I don't know if I talked about this one, but I started reading Outlander a couple years ago. I read the first book, and then I read, back in 2016, I read, what is it called? Where is it? It might be over there. Amber Spyglass, I think it's called, or something. Wait, let me do it. I can look in the book, because each of her books, Amber, Dragonfly and Amber. So I guess I was getting it mixed up with the Philip Pullman book. Dragonfly and Amber. So I need to read the third book of Voyager before my aunt catches up and gets the third book and gets that one read before I do. The thing about her though is that she probably is not reading as many books as I am. But in case you don't know, this is basically a story about this woman from the 1940s. World War II has just ended, so her and her husband Frank decide to go to Scotland to have a bit of a second honeymoon and renew their marriage vows and everything like that. And also, the husband Frank wants to learn more about his ancestor, Black Jack Randall, who was a British soldier during the Jacobite Rebellion, and he wants to learn more about this guy and everything, and about his history. And so Claire decides to, while they're there, she goes and explores Scotland and decides to, check out things. And she learns about these magical stones that she's led to believe hold great power. So Claire decides to check out the stones, and when she touches one of them, and think Stonehenge type stones. If you're familiar with England's Stonehenge, they're like that. And she ends up getting sent back to the 1700s, where she runs into the English army, and she also runs into some of the Jacobite rebels. And the leader of the English army is Black Jack Randall, who thinks she is a spy. And she ends up escaping them and runs into those, like I said, she meets those Jacobite rebels. And they offer her like a shelter and a place to stay, and she ends up realizing that she ends up being forced to marry for her protection. She ends up marrying one of the members of this clan, Jamie Fraser. And the rest of the book is basically about their relationship, how they grow from being just friends to falling in love, and the complications of she's a 20th century woman, and this is the 1700s, like 18th century, because no, the 19th century is the 1800s. Not 1900s, 1800s. We are in the 21st century. Sorry, that's a little pet peeve of mine that I remember my dad and his friends that participated in trivia night at my work were arguing about that one time. It's like, no, 1700s is the 18th century. So anyway, and it's about, so there are differences, and there are controversial issues in the story, in the series. Like, there's the infamous spanking moment that added some controversy for readers. Some of them didn't like it. And I was always a little conflicted on that particular issue, because on the one hand, I'm thinking, this is historical fiction, that's how it was. You may not like it, but that's how guys treated women, and it's not right, but it's how it was, so she's trying to be authentic. But then other people say it's problematic, and I feel like that's always going to be an issue. whether it's historical fiction or if you're writing a story about that isn't even historical, but you're trying to create problematic, messed up, toxic, complicated characters. And I imagine from what I've heard about Colleen Hoover, there's always that in those books, she runs into her readers and her run into that problem too, it sounds like. But anyway. And then, but also, because she's a woman from the future, she knows some things about what happened, the Jacobite Rebellion. So it's all about her like, maybe she can change history. That's what, like, the first two books are all about, like, her changing history. And this is the third book. So, and I guess I can't really say much about what happens in the third book, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys if you haven't read it, but if you are interested, it's a good series. I mean, like I said, there are some issues with it, and it's, you know, it is a romance oriented, but like I said, it's historical fiction, and there's the whole history of with Scotland and everything, so I think that kind of makes up for the romance. I mean, I love classic romance too, like Gone with the Wind is one of my favorite books, so I'm not totally against the idea of romance. You know, it's just, I don't want to read, like, modern straight-up romances anymore. But I will read books like this, that you could argue their main focus is a romance. But yeah, like I said, I want to get started on this one, and I want to read it before my aunt gets a little too ahead of me, but I haven't got around to it. So this one is going to be kind of a priority this year. And it's funny, now that I've read more books at this length, I know I'm capable of reading a book like this. I just haven't. It's just, I gotta put my focus on it and not, you know, read too many books at the same time, which is gonna be a bit difficult. But that's only the first book. I really loved The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And this book, I know this year it's coming out as either a movie or a TV show. I don't know. I think it stars, I don't know if it's Owen Wilson or Luke Wilson. That's going to be in it. It's one of the Wilson brothers. And it's kind of one of those coming of age stories. And where's Donna Tartt? She's very interesting. Probably a very big feminist woman. Big into his mom. So according to the back, I haven't read this I haven't read the back in a while, so I couldn't tell you what it's about off the top of my head. But it's this kid, Theo Decker, at 13. His mom dies, but in an accident, but he survives it. So I'm guessing something like a car accident. He's taken in by this wealthy family. It's something about a painting that he is intrigued by that comes into his possession. And then we go to when he's an adult. He works at an antique store. And I guess he's obsessed with that painting. Or something like that. But anyway, I'm very eager to read this book. But again, it's a tome. Like I said, my thing about tomes is I can't 100% focus on them. I love the cover. I think the cover is really interesting. I'm guessing that the thing with the bird is the painting that he's intrigued by. I like this like black chalk. It reminds me of the cover of Sweet Bitter. This black chalk kind of writing. I think that's really cool. And I love coming of age stories and looking at your childhood and then you're as an adult and thinking back to it and how one event changed everything for you, even if it's a small event. And like I said, I hear that this is going to become a TV series or a movie. I don't know which. But like I said, this is going to take me a while to read. So what I keep saying what I can do is I read a bunch of little books that don't take as long for me to read, and in between that read a bunch of tomes as well. But I can't wait to read. I love and I really like And it's a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. Oh, and Stephen King blurbed it. Because he does kind of write those kind of stories too. Mostly horror, but he also writes those kind of, like, some of his short stories and stuff are coming of age stories, or even his horror books can be coming of age stories also. Like It, for instance, I feel like it's a coming of age kind of story. Or like Revival, the one I just bought, because that one was one I got from I originally got it from the library, but then it was like, if it takes too long for me to read, I just can't get tomes from the library because they'll take me forever, and it bothers me knowing that I'm gonna eventually have to take it back and keep renewing it. It drives me crazy. Like, it makes me feel guilty and stuff like that. And I know I don't have, and maybe it's partly because I always check like 5-10 books from the library at the same time. But anyway, I want to read this one as well. Especially since, okay, here's another literary one, and this is by a very famous author who writes a lot of historical fiction. That is Ken Follett, and this is from her Century trilogy. It's the first one, and obviously, as you can see, I did start it. And he also writes, his other one is, his other trilogy is the Kingsbridge Chronicles, and it's about like this building. All I know is it's about a building of a cathedral. When I do have that one here, let me show you. And I think it will be easier to read this book because it is small and I can travel with it more easily. And I keep hearing how good of an author he is and how good his stories are. And I just haven't gotten to them yet. Because they are very dense. And this one is like physically big, not just dense, but physically it's big, so it's not as easy to travel with. And that's part of the problem. So, but I definitely feel like when I go on the cruise, despite the fact that my best friend is going to be with me on this cruise, one of my best friends is going with me on the cruise, which, by the way, I really hope my other best friends are not watching this because I would feel bad, but I can't invite them all, unfortunately, because they cost money. Cruises are really expensive, so, but anyway, even though she's going to be going, I'm still going to bring one of these big books with me, maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 with me, because, I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to bring a big, thick book with me. And I won't be able to bring my laptop because where am I going to plug it in? So I can get lost in a book during times when we're just lounging around the deck or laying in bed. But there won't be a lot of downtime. I know that, but I don't care. I'm still gonna bring a big book with me. Like 1 or 2. I should probably bring like 2, but I don't know. It'll be kind of hard. But anyway. So this one and this one I want to start reading again. I want to get back into them. Like I said, and I thought that I would like this one a little bit more than the other one because it's in the 20th century. So, and I think, and at the time that appeals to me more, but I'm definitely getting more into the idea of medieval literature. It's just finding the right book. Like some epic story, not just, I think that's the thing with medieval literature. You just gotta find the right story to really get that spark of interest. Because so far the ones I've read, like, the Tudor series is kind of interesting, just not my cup of tea anymore. And then there's I read the one that's one of those mystery type series where each book, you're dealing with the same character. Like Agatha Christie's books, but it's kind of set in the medieval time period. And the one I read was The Maiden of Handale or something. And she's kind of a medieval version of a detective. But of course she's a woman, and she ends up hiding out in an abbey, and there's a murder mystery involved, and it's up to her to figure it out. And she's undercover as a nun. So that was kind of interesting, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. But these more epic story about like building a cathedral might be more interesting to me than the other ones. Although the romance that's been established I don't know if it's the main romance, but that kind of bothered me though. It was like, wow, really? That was quick. That was fast. But like I said, I thought this one might be a little bit like, and again, I thought this one would be more interesting because it's about a family. It's a family saga in the 20th century. So anyway, I'm gonna read the 2 Ken Follett books. I gotta start those. And then next, this is one of the ones that's not in a series, or a trilogy, or even a duology. That is Charles Dickens' Little Dorrit. I've been meaning to start this one because I figured this is a good one to start with. I do not know why, but it's basically, this guy falls in love with this woman, but he's told that she's nothing but trouble, and her father has a bit of a reputation, was imprisoned and for debt, but he doesn't actually care. He still is gonna love her no matter what. And this is another one of the many ones that became a mini-series. I have the cover, looking at the cover, that's the cover I have, is the mini-series version. And I've been wanting to start, I wanted to start this one. And this one, it is a little smaller than like my copy of Fall of Giants. It's definitely smaller than that, but it's still hefty book. But it's one that I would like to read this year, possibly. Like I said, some of these I might not get to this year. But just looks like, and it's a big floppy book. I like the floppy. I agree with people like, I think it's Reagan who said that Reagan from Peruse Project said that she loves floppy books. And I like this. This is definitely very floppy. And I like it too. It's fun. It's fun to do this. But anyway, so I'm going to read this one as well. And, Dougherty Scott's wife, Claire Foy's in it. Plays, I guess that's Claire Foy. I think that's her. Oh no, Claire Forlorn is the one that's Dougherty Scott's wife. Never mind. But Claire Foy, I recognize her. Or at least her name. I don't know if I recognize her face. But anyway, but yeah, I've been wanting to read more Dickens. I've only read 2 Dickens novels. One of them was A Christmas Carol, which actually that's more of a novella. And years ago, I read A Tale of Two Cities, which I really just fell in love with that story. I mean, I was disappointed by the female character. That's the problem with Dickens. I feel like some of his earlier work, I've been told, including A Tale of Two Cities, the female characters are very weak. But I'm told that as the story progresses, as his books progress, and more books come out, and more you go through more of his library of books, the female characters get more interesting, and you do see that he does have a lot of respect for women. But anyway, I'm definitely interested. I feel like the female character might be a little more interesting in this one than in The Tale of Two Cities. But the male in Tale of Two Cities was awesome. And you kind of felt bad for the guy. Because it does not end well for him. Spoiler alert. Okay, and back to the series, fantasy series. I need to read The Wise Man's Fear. In case you don't know, this has become a very popular trilogy, although the author has not written the last book. And I really hope the rumor that I heard, the reason why he's not going to write the 3rd book, I hope that's not true, because I think that's stupid, his reasoning, but I'm not going to talk about it because it will go into an area that I don't want to delve into. But I really hope that rumor isn't true. But anyway, in case you don't know, with this trilogy, about the first book is called, let me see if I can find it really quickly. The Name of the Wind. And it's basically about, like, it's a kind of story within a story. Like this chronicle has heard about this famous man who has done a lot of like both good and bad. He's a wizard. It has developed a bit of a reputation. So he goes and finds him at this tavern, at this little pub that he works at, and he's just basically this mild mannered pub keeper. And the chronicle convinces him to tell his life story. And he agrees, but on the condition that he tells him his whole story within 3 nights. Only 3 nights. And that and there, like I said, it's a story within a story. Like, you learn this man's life story from when he was a boy to adulthood to, like, where he is now. But you also, like, the chronicle gets attacked, and so does his little tavern, his little barkeep gets attacked, and the kid in this, where is it? What's his name? Quoth, he suspects that there's something going on, and I think he suspects it has to do with the bad guy he is hunting when he tells the story. Because in the beginning of the story, we see him traveling with his family. They're kind of a traveling troupe of actors, and his family gets killed by, I can't remember what the evil force, the Candra or Candri, I think that's what it is, and that might be from a different story. I might be thinking of Mistborn, because I think that's what they call this one group of people. But because his parents gets killed, Quelf decides to go on a mission to find and get revenge for his parents. It kind of reminds me of Bruce Wayne a little bit, like if Bruce was in this medieval kind of setting. Now I know a lot of people did not like the first book because Quelf just seemed very like a bit of a Gary Stew, but I mean, the thing is, I think the problem is people aren't considering I agree that people do not consider the fact that he's narrating his own stories. Of course he's going to make himself look all awesome and badass and stuff. And he's going to look at people like women through rose-colored glasses. Like, I know people have a lot of, issues with his character, but the way his character is and the way he tells the story, it makes sense to me. Of course he's gonna glorify himself and make himself look awesome and badass in the air, and he's gonna be cocky because he's telling his own story. You cannot tell me you wouldn't do the same thing if you were narrating your own story to someone. You make yourself look really cool and stuff. I mean, you see that all the time, like in stories where, on TV shows and stuff, where they show the character is kind of like telling their own story or like telling about this moment in their past, and they make themselves, even if they look like a complete idiot in that moment in real life, they kind of color the story and make them look more cool than they are. Like, I'm particularly thinking about a moment in Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 7 where one of the characters, Andrew, the guy he's introduced in season 6, he's kind of doing a bit of a documentary of, Buffy and her team and everything, her little army that she's created. And he also does a little bit snippet of telling about himself in an encounter he had with a villain in season 6. And he didn't look so good. He didn't look as cool and badass. He kind of looked like he's a scared little boy. But then when he tells it, he makes himself look all awesome and clever and stuff. And so, to me, it makes sense that someone telling their story would make themselves look a lot cooler than they are. And this book is day 2 of the story. And like in day 1, like I said, his family was killed. He goes to he hears about this magical school. He makes friends. He makes an enemy at his school. And amongst his teacher, his peers and his teachers. And it's like about his enemies and the friends he makes. And before he got to the school, we saw his life where he lived on the streets. He was very poor and stuff like that. and how he survived. And just so much. This story is so rich and so interesting. And I need to read the second book, despite the fact that rumor I heard, why is the third book, has really annoyed me. And I almost was like, maybe I just should stop reading the series. But it's such a good book. And I'm sure the author knows that he's written a great book despite some criticisms he's received. People who don't like Quoth as a character. So I gotta read this one. And then this is another one I gotta read. Now, this is a very interesting book. It's about two mages, but it's very much a slow read. It's written like a Dickens novel. That's the best way to put it. I'm still interested in it though. I want to get to the good stuff. But we have Mr. Norrell, and it's set during, Napoleonic time, I want to say. The Napoleonic era. Maybe not. Let's see, does it say? Oh, yeah. No, yeah, it is. Napoleonic Wars are involved. Are raging right now. And it's kind of like it's basically if there's magic, if there really was magic during that time. Because we don't, I know that there was a time when people were very superstitious. But, if magic was introduced to the world at that time, and basically, this Mr. Norrell actually reveals magic to the public, to make his point, but then it gets the public a little excited, and they decide to rely on his magic, Mr. Norrell and his magic. But then, I haven't gotten to this point, but I do believe that this other guy, Jonathan Strange, is a younger magician who hears about Mr. Norrell, and he tries to apprentice towards him, but then I think a rivalry is established between the two magicians, because he's the young kid who has all these new ideas and has different views on magic, and Mr. Norrell is the wise old man that feels like you should be careful with magic and be cautious about it. And I think a rivalry is established. It's nice to read a fantasy that's a standalone. I definitely get why people are like, oh, it's, they appreciate reading that there is one fantasy out there. There are some fantasies out there that are standalones, but are still epic in scale. Like I said, I haven't got very far, but again, it's written like a Dickens novel, so I can understand where not everybody would love it, and some people might DNF it because it's kind of boring at times. But the good news is the chapters can be, not all the chapters, some of the chapters aren't very long, some of them are actually really short. And I do like, I can understand why I can get bored, but sometimes if I'm in the right place, I do like reading Dickens type novels. And actually there's another series that I have here, His Majesty's Dragons, which I did not take down. But, I guess I could show you that one too. I don't know how many pages that one is. Oh, I just realized I never did tell you how many pages some of these books are. Okay, so the Ken Follett ones are... This one is... 983 pages. This Pillars of the Earth. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is... over 1,000. Yeah, it's over 1,000 pages. It's 1,006 pages. Wow. This one is... Oh, 1,107 pages. So it's even longer than Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This one is... Little Dorrit is about... that. I hate when authors have all these notes and stuff. I understand it's important, but it's like, you have to go past all these notes. Oh no, this is still in analysis notes. 859 pages. Okay, so Ken Follett's other book, Fall of Giants, is about (985 pages. And Voyager is about Ooh, 1,059 pages. Wow. If I can read these books, I'm going to come off as very impressive. And then let's see. The Goldfinch is about 771 pages. Okay. So next, this is one I'm going a little bit more deeper into, and that is Acacia, which is another one that is a trilogy, I think, or a series by David Anthony Durham. And this is the one I mentioned earlier that it reminds me of the Stark siblings a little bit, the four main kids. So basically what I've read so far is that their father has just been poisoned and these four siblings now have targets on their back because they want to get rid of every possible heir to the throne now that they've killed the king. And they must go, and run away, basically. This one is supposed to. I can kind of understand why people that don't read fantasy might get annoyed, because even I still struggle with figuring out how to pronounce names. Like, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Acacia, Axia, or something. I don't know how to say the name of the place where they live. But the four siblings kind of remind me of the Stark children. But I'm on chapter 22, and the dad is still dying. He hasn't died yet. The poison is really slow. But the chapters are kind of short, and we know that their dad, the reason why he got poisoned was there's a traitor in the kingdom who's bent on revenge against their dad. And I feel so bad because the one kid is going to be, he's so young, and he's going to be the heir to the throne, but now he has a target pain on his back because they don't want anyone to take the place of. But it's a really good, very rich read, and so it is a trilogy. That's right, and it's 753 pages. So it's definitely. I am really enjoying this book, and I'm so glad because I definitely knew that these epic books would have such rich stories. It's just taking the time and the patience to actually sit there and read the books. That's the hard part. I feel like actually sitting down and reading them and getting far enough in them that you can really fall into the stories. Like Fall of Giants is one of those ones where I feel like I need to get farther into the book to really fall into the story. So next, this one is one of the first YA books I have here. I think. I don't think I showed any other YA books. Crooked Kingdom, the sequel to Six of Crows. It's a duology. And as you can see, I've read this. I don't know if I guess I'm halfway, I think. But basically, the first book is about a group of thieves who are sent on a mission to a well-guarded prison, to retrieve a prisoner scientist who has invented a drug that will make that is meant for the magic users of this world, the people who have magic in this world, and that it's like basically it's like being high essentially, and it makes you extremely powerful and makes you feel invincible, but then it will slowly kill you as you become more addicted to the drug. And this is I definitely recommend. I don't care what some people say. I think you need to read even if the Grisha trilogy isn't your cup of tea, I think you need to read the Grisha trilogy first if you want to read this duology, because the original Grisha trilogy explains the background of this world, and not only that, but explains the magic system of this world. And I do believe that there's reference to some of the characters that were introduced in the original Grisha trilogy. So I don't care like I said, I don't care what other people. I think you need to read the Grisha trilogy first before you get into this, because I think you might be lost and confused if you read Six of Crows without having read the Grisha trilogy. This is a Russian-inspired setting too, which I think is really cool. Something I've never read. Mostly I read European set stories or European-inspired stories. But this is just such. Like, the characters are so interesting and so colorful, and they are not good people. You know, I mean, some of them are better than others, I feel like, but, and there's no, none of the characters are, mopey, feel sorry for me, I try to be a good person, and the first book is very much a heist story, but, to be warned, the first part does go more into introducing the characters and planning this heist that they're going to do. The second half does get into heist territory. So the beginning can be a bit slow, seem a bit tedious and boring, but trust me, give it a chance, keep going. I mean, you don't know me, so you don't necessarily, so yeah, you might not trust me, but I personally think you should keep going with the Six of Crows. This is the second one, and it's basically about the consequences of what happens at the end of Six of Crows. So I can't really tell you much about it and I don't know who's read the Six of Crows or not. So again, I can't say anything because who knows. And let's see. Like I said, I'm halfway in this one, and I really need to get back into it. So let's see. How many pages does this one have? 546. So it. Oh wait, no. Let's see, acknowledgements page. 536 pages. So it barely meets the criteria, but still considered a tome in my opinion. I mean, look at this chunker with the pretty stained pages. I love that. I like how authors are doing that now. So let's go through these really quickly, these last 5, or 4, or 6. So this is another series. I got into Robin Hood last year. I really like her. I've enjoyed her book so far. Her book, I should say, I've only read the first book in her series, but I really liked it. It is slow, but this is the second book in her Farseer trilogy about this boy named Fitz, who's the bastard son of one of the princes, and eventually he is sent to be apprenticed to the stable master, Burrick. But then eventually he is noticed by the prince, his father, the king, and taken in, but he's still considered a bastard and is not entirely part of the royal family. But he becomes not only apprenticed to Burrick, but he eventually becomes an apprentice to Shade, who is the king's assassin. And he learns about, in the beginning, in the first one, he learns about taking care of animals, while in the second half of the book, he learns about, how to tell if someone's an enemy. He learns about detecting enemies and making weapons and spying on people and all that juicy stuff. And the books, it's about his growing up. It starts when he's 6 years old, and then eventually goes to when he's an adult in the final book. And right now he's kind of like a teenager, mid-teens, and then I'm guessing he's going to end up in his 20s. It's such a, and be warned, it can be very depressing at times and very tragic seeing the young Fitz's life and how it really kind of sucks. And he experiences his first love, but I don't know if she's going to be in the third one or in the other trilogy that is about Fitz as an adult. I don't know if she's going to come up again. But and it's kind of, and he also develops some powers. As being part of the Farseer family line by, even though he's a bastard, he still shares their blood. And he has this power of, where he can, it escapes me what the power is called, but he can, and this family has the ability to kind of read your mind, get inside your head, and communicate with other people via the mind. And he has that ability. He develops that ability because it's still in his blood. He still is capable of having that. But there's also another magic system, another ability, another power that he develops, which is called the wit, where he can communicate and mind well with animals. But Burke warns him not to express that gift because there's that superstitious belief that when you do that, you become more beast than man. And I remember when I was reading that book, I so hoped he was wrong because his connection with animals is so sweet and so cute. And unfortunately, though, there are moments where you kind of worry that Burke is right. I feel like in this second book, at the end of the first book. But it's, at the same time, I feel like that one entirely, I think it depends on the person and who they are and their ability in their self-control. Not getting rid of it altogether and going cold turkey on it, but just reminding themselves that they are human and that the animal, and that animals aren't just vicious monsters. They're no different than humans. They're not as intelligent as humans, but still. And I'm at the halfway point with the second book. And it is, like I said, it's a slow read, but it's really a great story. And, it's not as exciting as, some of the YA books that I read. But it's still such a very, it's such a heart, you feel such sympathy for Fitz and you just want to hug him. And you just hope that his life does not go as bad as, that his life goes in a happier direction eventually. And then last but not the rest of these last 4 books are all classics. So I read John Steinbeck in high school. My sophomore year, we read Of Mice and Men. And at the time, I didn't like it, but now as I'm getting older, I figure, I want to give John Steinbeck another shot. And so far, this is definitely a really interesting read, but I do think I need to start over with it. It's basically about these 2 families, the Trask family and the Hamilton family. And I've been told that it's kind of a bit of an Adam and Eve story. And it's hard to really sum up what this book is about. Like I said, I feel like I need to reread it from the beginning. But it's very interesting. It focuses on the 2 Trask brothers, and they have this kind of rivalry between them. And it also focuses, like I said, on the Hamilton family. Like I said, just a very interesting read, and I can understand I definitely get the appeal of Steinbeck's writing. At least I definitely want to start over with it so I can do a better description of what this book is about. That is East of Eden. Okay, and I just realized I haven't mentioned what I'm talking about. East of Eden. So it's basically a family saga, and I really am getting into those lately. But I still gotta read Roses. I gotta finish that one, which I am so close to getting that one done. It's just, again, not always the most exciting book, but definitely interesting. Next, I got to read this one. I think this is one of the oldest books on my shelf, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. And I've seen the movie version of this. so I know what it's about. Basically, this guy, Edmond Dantes, is accused of treason, and he is sent to a prison, a prison, and somehow, with the help of a priest who begins to kind of teach him and helps him escape, he decides to get revenge on the one who betrayed him, who turns out to be his best friend. And he runs into pirates who help him steal this magical treasure, and he creates this whole new identity for himself. This mysterious, very rich count, the Count of Monte Cristo. And when he gets back to his old hometown, he finds out not only is his best friend living the good life, and his dad is living in squalor, but his fiancée is marrying his best friend. And he, and it's all about him getting revenge on them for betraying him. It's a bit of a swashbuckler revenge story, and it's so fun. I remember I really enjoyed the movie, but again, the book is so hefty and slow moving. So I need to read this again and get past the slow part and get to the exciting parts, like when he's in the prison and all that kind of stuff. It's just such a slow, again, a very slow read. That's the problem with classics, is they can be very slow and tedious until you get to the exciting parts. And I've had this one the longest, so I really need to prioritize this one as well. It's just, there are so many new books that I have. It's like, I want to read that one now. I want to read that one now. Or not necessarily even new books, but books I just bought that I'm like, oh, I have to read that one now. Like, I recently bought Don Quixote, so I'm kind of interested in reading that one. And then the last two are two that I've started. Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is one that I heard from both my book Olive and Jen from Insert Literary Pun. It's basically about this town of Middlemarch, and we get multi-perspectives, all these people in their lives in this small town, I think Jen implied that not everybody, most of the people with a few exceptions, end up having really crappy lives and kind of regret their choices in life. But it's just, I've enjoyed how it's written so far, and I've enjoyed getting to know these people and these characters so far. I've gone as far as reading about the sisters and how they're living with their uncle because their parents died, and he's trying to get them married off, and the oldest one, who's a bit of the bookworm, the intellectual sister, she has set her sights on this, I think he's a priest, but her uncle and her sister and everyone else is like, why do you want to marry this guy? He's so boring. He's not your, you can do better than that. But she is stubborn and has her way. But I think what ends up happening eventually is she realizes that she shouldn't have married this guy. But anyway, it's been really interesting. I love how it's written. I really, I'm really really intrigued by this, and I want to read more. I want to read more of these classics, and say I've read them and then I really enjoyed them. But it's hard to focus on them. And the last one is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I still cannot pronounce his name. And I think it's basically this guy who he is convicted of a crime. He tries to come up with the perfect crime. And it kind of looks at the Russian criminal system and how that works and stuff like that. And again, this is one that I haven't got very far in, but it is really interesting when I read it at the right times. That's the other thing. I feel like I need to read these books at certain times, not when I'm tired, when I'm not distracted, my concentration is fully focused. Then I can really focus on these stories and read them. But yeah, this is such a good. A classic is probably not the best book to bring with me on the cruise. That's for sure. But I still have it's still 3 months away, or 2 soon. But yeah, I want to put a damper on a little bit more than a dent in all these books. So, that is part 2. I don't know if there's going to be any more, that I'm going to, but those are all my tomes that I want to read. And I don't know if I'll get to them this year, but if you read tomes, would love to hear in the comments below, which ones do you want to read? Which ones have you read? Which ones are you in the middle of? I'd love to know those answers. If you like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already. And also, click the bell notification below if you want to know when I post new videos. And as always, I hope you all are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye.